Man was created in the image of God. See, when some people hear that, they think of an outside God, and you were created in its image. But if you really sit and just think of it like this, okay? Man was created in the image of God. You are sitting here and you are perceiving your reality. Man, or what you know of as mankind outside of you, was created in your image. You, as the individual, as the observer, are the embodiment of God. You are in form, and the form that you take, okay? 2 arms, 2 legs, torso, head. It looks like a star. So this was the physical manifestation of what you look like, expressing yourself here to actually be the embodiment of God. So when you see man outside of you and you hear man was created in the image of God, every single person you see outside of you was created in your particular image. So not the way that we would look at it as, man was created in the image of God and you include yourself in all of man. Just change that perspective a little bit. But you could, if you really want to look at it as a star, the star beam, the star man, okay? And how bright do you shine here? There's people in Hollywood, they call them superstars, and this is for a reason, because you are a star. So you're manifested here as a light body looking like a star, 5-pointed star. So when you hear these things and you hear about, I've been talking about AI a lot, and you see AI and you start to ask yourself, do these things have consciousness, the ability to think, all these things? Let's say they do. There's different resonance to what can inhabit certain things. For example, you have houses. Houses get haunted, right? And that's basically a spirit that inhabited the house. And as you, a physical being, expressing yourself here in this waking state, okay, you actually can feel the presence of certain spirits when things are actually haunted, So same thing, things get possessed. You give meaning to certain things. You can deify certain things. Let's say if you're into guns, you're into knives, and I'm into drawing, I'm into the garden. The garden to me is one big body, but separated into separate little compartments of systems that I give meaning to. So life, you give meaning to life, and whatever life means to you depends on the meaning you want to give it, okay? Not the meaning it's given to you. Whatever is given to you are nothing but symbols. The occult is what's in you for you to know yourself from the inside out. Why I made the video before about documenting the dream. Very importantly, because whenever let's say when a child is born, you come here aware that you're in the body of a child. However, you cannot express yourself, or you cannot utilize. It's kind of like if you're trying to use your computer, but your computer doesn't have the capacity to get into certain programs or certain things, or you want to open up certain apps, but you didn't do a systems upgrade, or you don't have enough capacity, you don't have enough space to do so. Your body matures through time. This is why you are able to intellectually figure things out more than a child can. But you became aware the moment you came out of the womb. You were aware that you were in a body, but you couldn't express yourself to express to the people who you are. You can only just look at people, but then what happens? You end up falling asleep. You merge with the body. You concrete yourself into the reality a lot more, especially the parents. The vaccines put you more to sleep. I consider those things more of like a sedative, in a way where it keeps you separate from what you actually are. And we talk about like junk DNA. Like, see, kids are born perfect. And kids, basically, when we're born here as children, we just need to be upgraded, but we're not being upgraded. In fact, we're being more downgraded. And the fact that we're being more downgraded is because the memory of realizing what you are. We come out here trying to figure these things out outside of us so much, and it's not really about figuring anything out. It's more or less realizing who and what you are, and things will just fall into place. Everything will just start to make sense, But when you come here and you're pushed so far polarized to one end to memorize things, like learning things in school by memorization, that if you really think about it, how unnatural it is that, ask yourself, how many of those things that you learned in school to memorize and to do all these things, how many of those things do you actually utilize as an adult, even to have a job? Let's say just to have a job, how many of those things do you actually utilize? You know, they say, oh, you exercise your brain like that and whatnot, but there's different ways to exercise the brain. Like critical thinking. Sometimes when you have a child, the child is basically more or less in a creative space, and they, you know, this is why I know they do things backwards to some extent, and they're more in a certain space in their brain than they are when they're in the left brain. And the reason I say this is, like, I tell my son to write a number 2, and instead of writing the 2 like this, he starts from the bottom and writes it up. He does this with 3s and 4s. He writes it backwards, and I find that weird. And he's not a lefty, he's a righty, okay? But he writes it backwards, and I'm like, this is fucking interesting. Why does that happen? He writes letters the same way. He writes them backwards, and when you start to do it in that way, it starts to symbolically show where you're at in your brain, or in what side of the brain you're operating more dominantly on. See, my son's never been vaccinated. He goes to school now, you know, but you know, of course, I have to teach him the things I may find favorable for him based on the level of intellect or the level of wisdom that I'm at. That's where I try to guide my child. You know what I'm saying? I guide my child more than anything. I don't try to control him or teach him too much, like the aggressiveness of how they do it in school. I do it in order for him to be able to, you know, academically move forward and partake and entertain in this system accordingly. Okay? But still being balanced. It's not being too polarized, because when you're not playing or participating in the game at all, I don't think that's very conducive to some extent. I don't think that's very you know, I don't even know the word I want to use. Whatever, don't matter. So, you know, if you're coming into this game, it's important to, now you're an adult, you have a dream, okay? The moment you wake up, you can vaguely remember the dream, but when you don't write it down, you very easily forget it. So if a child comes in and he remembers everything, and the awareness is actually there, the memory of where and what he was, it completely forgets. Just like when you wake up in the dream, you just forget the dream, you know? So when you talk about man made in the image of God, when you talk about computers, AI, your phone and whatnot, this is why I say use these things to your advantage. Use them as tools. You know what I'm saying? The moment you put yourself in a victim mode or in a fearful state, that is consent. When you fear, you consent to being a prey. When you fear, let's say, anything that you see outside of you, it is open consent to saying, I am in the position of fear because I look at you bigger or more than me. Okay? Doesn't matter what, that's why it's important to realize what energy you're using and why you're using it. Fear, okay, can be beneficial in a sense where if I'm in a fight, okay, it keeps me, there's a healthy fear and there's an unhealthy fear. The healthy fear, I'm more in my heart space in the sense where, that's why when you're in a fight and you can endure, damn, that person got heart, you know what I'm saying? But notice how the heart beats like drums. Drum, I consider that war symbols, war tones. You know what I'm saying? Like boom, boom, boom. When you're about to go to war, the faster they speed up, the more intense it is. You kind of feel that warlike energy, you know? And then you have it also to build. There's a certain tempo and a frequency. The frequency is all measured by the motor, the heart, how you drive it. Okay, there could be a certain level of healthy stress to unhealthy stress as well. If you have healthy stress, you become stronger. Just like when you put the muscle into tension in the gym, you strengthen the muscle out. When you're stressed out by, you know, bills and unhealthy relationships in your life, this is not considered good stress. Okay, so if I say man created in the image of God, and I put out certain information that puts you in the seat of empowerment, some people don't resonate with that. You see, because of the position and state you're in mentally, that could be the reason why you wouldn't resonate with information like that. It's not an indoctrination, but whenever I listen to information or anything outside of me, I try to look for the empowered source of things. Some things may feel comfortable. Some things may feel uncomfortable. See, I've been uncomfortable in certain things that have been happening in my life lately, actually, you know, but that uncomfort, I have to basically process it. And this way, when I process it, I integrate it and I use it to my advantage. I don't put myself in victim mode and say, this is happening and I don't know what to do. You see, people say, I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know what to do. Is basically you not understanding and processing the emotions that you're feeling. So everything that happens inside of you, okay, you processes it and find out why it is happening to begin with. Because everything I see outside of me are nothing but symbols, which I'm going to make the video. We're going to talk about more or less like what I was just talking about when I made the video on, the worldwide shadow work and whatnot. And I'll go into it in that. But the reason documenting the dream is important is for that reason, because you want to find out what's in your head. Okay? Find out what's in your subconscious mind. You see, the mind is all. But the mind is not the brain. You see, the mind is all. The universe is mental. The vessel that you operate in this reality with is basically all. Because I am the one experiencing this reality through this vessel. Even though there is another vessel outside of me, it is an illusion of a vessel that was created in the image of God. But if you can perceive your reality in a certain way where you're on the right side of energy and you can manage and control your emotions like the CEO of a company, to have a properly functioning system, the operating systems, you will even know that computers, if we want to say they think for themselves now, or computers or, AI taking over, it's nothing but energy that's in resonance with that computer. Now, you can look at certain deities or energies that you may want to work with, let's say. If you fear them or you put them above you or you worship them, like if they're your God, this is what will happen. AI is no different. It's a physical manifestation of the way we manage energies. If you do not know how to manage or control AI, so you could do, let's say, whatever it is that you want to do with the computers. But the whole thing is the computers are, how do I put this? When I look at computers don't have the human level emotions that humans have. Computers, they can figure and put things together a lot quicker. So we're in the most important, let's say people say this is the greatest time to be alive. The shift is happening. Okay? How do you know these computers weren't there to help you advance a lot faster in not just the physical way, but in the metaphysical way than you would think of? Because if you really look at it, we technically could say everything we see is an illusion. But how much more of an illusion are the people that you connect with online? I never met these people in my life. They could just be illusions of a AI robot. I don't know who the fuck they are. I never met them personally. But yet I've had interactions and connections with these people and have helped me connect a lot of dots, but all in balance. Sometimes knowing too much sets you back even more, because what are you learning with? No different than when you go to school and you're learning too much to figure things out as far as like how the system is at play. You're trying to figure out math problems, social studies, language arts, or whatever it may be that you learn in school. You try to figure problems out when they give you a problem to solve. You come out here and you're solving problems that if you get too much into that, you are further pushing your natural state of being away, where you came in, where you're more trying to connect to your subconscious to realize what it is that you actually are, to figure out what's going on in your head by intentionally going to bed to remember your dreams, intentionally going to bed to, let's say, try to come out of body, to have these metaphysical and spiritual experiences. So we know, if you've had these experiences, that there's more to this reality than we know of, because I've had these experiences, so I know there's much more to this. There's people who have never came out of body, and then when I talk to them about it, they look at me like I'm weird. But I'm like, well, have you ever came out of body? And they're like, no. Well, I'm like, well, that's the reason why. You've never even experienced this. So how can you judge what I'm telling you as a farce or false if you have never even experienced it? at all, you know? So, see, it's about more understanding what it is that's going on. When you have an understanding, you have the understanding, there's no room for judgment. There's really a connectiveness in everything, which is why when I say I'm gonna make the next video, I can even say I connected to what I actually entertain as far as like sports or combat sports rather, you know? And, you know, everything's symbolism. Everything is symbolism. See, we give meaning based on what we were told it means from the moment we're born. But what happens if we were never told what anything out here means and we were supposed to just figure it out? How do you think we would have evolved to the point we're at now if we didn't have language, if we didn't give things actual meanings? If I go into a forest and I hear a bunch of sounds, you know what I'm saying? Let's say I don't know what any of those sounds are. It's more of a mystery and it's open to be anything. And that's the beauty part of it. But the moment I go into the forest and I hear certain sounds that may sound like a rattlesnake, now I'm already fearful because I already know that rattlesnakes are poisonous and dangerous. But what if I never knew about a rattlesnake? How about if I was able to communicate and interact with a rattlesnake because I was never told what it means or given meaning, or those fears were ever passed down to me at all? That's why they say a child can swim, but if a child is near the water, the parent always gets scared and they pass that fear on to the child. If a child is afraid of bugs, it's because it came from the parents. All that was passed down. The child absorbed the frequency of the parent. So it's more or less like we poisoned the child to some extent from their actual natural state. And it's all happening from the moment they're in the womb, you know? But then again, the resonance and frequency you were in is the resonance and frequency that matched you to the parents that you chose to be here with. So you put yourself here to either try to figure something out. You never know. I was like, well, I try to, you know, I think if I place myself in this situation, okay, based on where I have been, because, you know, this is more or less like putting me in a position. Let's say the greatest time and moment to be alive is to figure out, you know, from the inside out, but realizing that all is symbolism based on my interaction with the internet. Because you see, this is why I say the internet and things, they're like deities and energies that you work with. If you're into knives and guns, you give those things meaning. There's no meaning to life unless you give it meaning. You give life meaning, because life is basically what you see outside of you as you, pushed, reversed inside out. So if there's spiritual meaning to a knife, right? If I utilize a knife, I can use it to cut physical objects, but I can also use it as a spiritual tool as well. Okay? I can use wine as a spiritual tool. I can use my garden as a spiritual tool, where it's basically a bunch of, this is my army. You know what I'm saying? And it's not because I am protecting or at war against something. You know, it's more or less like this. How do I put it? I have a dog, right? If somebody comes into the house, my dog is going to attack that intruder. If the dog senses that intruder has bad intentions, okay? That dog is man's best friend. The dog is a version or an aspect of myself, but I train that dog all in the interest of, I know about dogs, right? I had to learn about dogs. I have an understanding about dogs. I can bond with my dog. So I became one with my dog in a sense. It's man's best friend. See, sometimes the dog doesn't have to talk to me. I know what the dog wants based on how he looks at me, or based on certain actions that he may do. I already know what the dog wants. So I know the dog very well. It's just like you get to know your car. You hear the strangest, the most vaguest little sound, the most subtle sound, and you'll already know it because you drive your car every day. You know, you get the phone, everything gets to know you back in return. The car could have a cursed energy where it's always breaking down on me, or it can be a favorable thing because I'm in gratitude. This is a 2000 Jeep Cherokee. I love this Jeep. I've had this Jeep for like 10 years already. And I can go buy a new car. However, why would I do that? The Jeep drives perfectly good, okay? I just made over 200,000 miles on it, and it runs like when I first got it. I've done upgrades to it, made it more off-road capable, put reinforced suspension, you know, put the Line-X cover under the car to prevent it from rusting.